3 o'clock. Did we play the recording already? Yep. Go ahead with the recording.
Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our budget meeting. If you'll rise and join me in a pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Full complement in the room. Mr. Charlie Thomas from the staff is online. Can you hear us, Charlie?
Yes.
Excellent. At this point, we have public comment. Any public comment for non-agenda items?
I just want to verify the public notice of this meeting, supervisor's package was dated 2024. And him and staff verified what's correct in the paper.
Okay.
Just when I looked at that, I said, hope that's not what in the paper. So thanks.
You haven't invented a time machine yet. Thank you, Mr. Right. We'll jump into our consent agenda, which is approval of the meeting agenda for today. In a motion. Regular consent.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Gallagher. Any public comment or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes. We're now into our budget discussion. I'll let staff take it away from here.
We're going to start with Kevin, who's going to give us an overview of 2024 end balances and then where we are this year for 2025.
For 2020, I printed out a copy of the general fund comparison of budget versus actual and highlighted the new items that and some differences. Overall revenues equal to budget, although interest income was higher than budgeted just because interest rates remained high the entire year. And then the charges for services was lower than budgeted due to the Upper Lake Hawk Township. We charged based on call volume, and their call volume was lower than what we had anticipated. But overall, revenues were equal budget for 2024. As far as the expenditures come in under budget by 1.2 million. That was spread out over all the larger departments, the admin, the police, the planning and zoning, and public works and parks. Pretty much every department did a good job at controlling expenses and making sure they spend it on appropriate things and didn't overspend. So the expenditures coming in at under budget by 1.2 million ended up helping our fund balance at the end of the year to be higher than we had projected. The fund balance as a percentage of expenditures at the end of 2024 was almost 42%, which is significantly higher than state the board stated policy. For 2025 for general fund, I feel as though the revenues are going to end up being lower than budget. Most of the larger items will end up being equal to budget, but interest income will be lower than budget because we had to make a little over $100,000 payment to the IRS to earn essentially interest income that we earned on bonds higher than what we should have. And then also Upper Lake Township, with their police services, had paid more than what we had requested them to pay. And so they have a $400,000 credit that they're utilizing, so that making on a police services revenue less than budget. I'm also thinking that our total expenditures will be lower, but as well. So far, the department heads are doing a good job again of controlling expenses and just being frugal with the money. The budgeted deficit for 2025 in the general fund is $1 million. I anticipate that's probably where we'll end up being for the year. But still a fair number of months left. It's hard to say. So, so right now, general fund balance is good shape, subject to change in the future. The sewer fund for 2024, our actual deficit with equal to budget. Happy fees were well in excess of budgeted revenue. And then treatment costs that we pay to the city of Lancaster were significantly higher than what we had budgeted. A lot of that was due to just timing of when the bills come in and just the rates were different than but in total we ended up where we expected as far as the deficit for the 2025 for the sewer fund. I believe our revenues will be lower than budget. We had elections during 24 that were essentially one time collecting prior revenues in 24 that realized in 25. As far as the expenditures, other than the treatment costs for the city, we should end up equal to budget. But the city, we just never know when they're gonna send us the bills for treatment costs. And they had sent out the first quarter treatment cost bill in June. So a little later than normal. So I'm not sure when we'll get to all the bill.
Can you remind us on that, is that cash basis or?
Cash basis.
So it's when we get the actual bills.
When you approve the payment.
So that's why it's not showing at all, right now.
Right. Yep, yeah, because we had received it and received the bill, but we hadn't yet Communication and disagreement over calculations, just decided to hold off on. The sewer fund. We make no changes. In future expenditures or future revenue, the fund balance will go negative in 2029.
So recommendations on how that's not to happen.
I had recruited basically a 10% increase in the sewer fee to be effective 1/1/27. And by doing that, then that alleviates the negative fund balance.
Does it just push it out till 2031 or is it
I didn't go out that far.
at least 2029 isn't the year then?
Right, yeah.
What is the target?
Well, then we'll get to your question in 1 second. But let's remember, that's based off of the assumptions that the board put into place a few years ago in developing these projections, right? So that's a 1% increase in charges over time, which hasn't happened. And that's state aid of 2%, and then keeping revenues the same as 2024. And then increases in salary by 3.5%, increases in healthcare costs by 6%, which we all know is not the case for East Lane Peter, in fact, it's 16%. Other employee benefits at 3%, workers' compensation at 3.5%, professional services at 5%, and these are all increases per year, right, as he does the projection. And utilities at a 5% increase, then other expenditures at a 3% increase. So please just keep that in mind as we're talking about the sewer fund. Those assumptions were set, I believe, in 2021 to do projections in 2022.
Yeah.
Aside from the healthcare projection, anything jump out there that seems?
Well, and the sewer charge is increasing 1% by year.
Which would just kind of be a reflection of potential development, additional connections to sewer.
At the $95 per quarter EDU charge since 2016.
Or 90, I think, right?
From 90 to 90.
That was a ball. So
So how do we establish a goal on that? The amount we need in the map?
So based on the 2025 budget, then all of those assumptions are applied. And then it's projected out through the years. That is the 5-year projection sheet that you all have. And it's at the very bottom.
So if we start with almost 6 million. But that says that's what the current budget is. Just in general, in theory, what are we trying to maintain? What is the formula is it
First of all, positive fund balance.
I don't know that there
for the
is.
sewer fund?
There's
And
no.
I'm saying, like you need normally for a size township like us, you better have several million in there. Because you don't know what the projects will be, or that's what I mean.
Projects will be paid for out of the sewer authority, which typically are all financed, which would ultimately end up in townships.
It's interesting.
with that, yeah.
Yeah, payments.
Okay, so the sewer, any big projects are bonded. We approve that bond issuance, the debt service. And the goal of that is to sort of even out some of these giant spikes. But it's how much debt service can the current revenues maintain? And so, in that 2027 one, that's currently when the sewer authority has authorized those changes in fees.
2026, which
But no, 27 was when I factored in.
The sewer authority just authorized changing rates.
two new connection. Yes, that takes effect on 1/2026.
And is that calculated into this?
This is connecting fees. That's not, we set the 90, 95 out. Got it. Okay.
So Mike, if you look at the sewer fund as operational costs, that's what this is. And project and capital projects through the authority.
Yeah, a lot of, as you say, this projection was done in 24. Kind of using 2025's budget. So depending on how we change 2026 budget would impact that.
So this has been something that the board needs to take action on this year. This is coming down the line. And if the assumptions stay the same, and if they actually come to fruition, this is where we'll be.
When we're changing the quarterly EDU charges, what percentage of the revenue is that hitting? How much, like,
A large majority of it.
so how much of that, 4.5 million in revenue is coming from the EDU charge? And how much is from?
Probably like 4 million, 4.1 million.
8% extra.
One. So a smaller increase there goes a lot longer.
Correct. Yes.
So the same conversation when we get over to the other side. Problem with the other side is our lever is real estate taxes, and that's a small percentage of our revenue is the only thing we can actually change.
My feeling is give it now since someone will be on the board. So I'll vote for this. I'd rather, instead of wait till 2027, raise it by like $5, right? Just go to $100, which is a little more than 5%, of course.
Yeah.
Instead of a big increase of 10% in 2027. So it's, I think this board I won't say got in trouble, but we made no tax increases. Then we had to make a bigger tax increase instead of just keeping up over there. So I'd rather $5, yes, it's an impact, but it's better than, a much bigger impact 2027. And then we're under the stress that we're gonna be out of money in 2 years, so that's just my thought.
I would concur with that thought. This goes sort of and each board is different. So that again, I get to vote on this budget, but I don't have to live with it, other than as a taxpayer. But you typically have two strategies in townships and local governments, whether it's school districts as well. School districts tend to have gone with we know what the rate of inflation is of these things. We know where our healthcare costs are. We need to do regular incremental tax increases just to keep up with the fact that our expenses are rising faster than organic growth of revenue. Because the county does not do tax reassessment except for every decade, if they feel like it. And so because of that, that's a more steady, easier to budget process. A lot of townships, smaller ones, will go the opposite and say, hey, we're gonna hold the line on taxes as long as possible, then do a large tax increase, ride that wave down, do another one again. I lean towards make the incremental choices, look at the budget of that. It's less good politically because you have to run for reelection. But it's better for for managing your budget and setting expectations for your users, your customers, and basically saying, our costs are rising faster than the value of your house value is rising at a fast rate too. We're just not capturing any of the gain that you are as a taxpayer. Other than every 10 years, and then we're restrained with how much we can actually raise when reassessment is done. So I would concur of, generally speaking, and that's the last couple of years, we've sort of shifted in that strategy and tried to do more smaller tax increases. I'd recommend doing the same thing with the sewer fund.
I agree. I agree.
Move on to.
The other objectives, let's hear from the staff.
Excellent. Thank you, Tara.
Gentlemen, I'm being late. So I'll touch on the big numbers for the police department in next year's budget. And you'll find that most of these items are personnel. The PD is still trying to hire in preparation of 8 pending retirements, 2 of those in 26 and 6 of them in 27. And I'm requesting that the board consider the hiring of 4 to 5 officers this year to attend the police academy in January of 26, but then an additional 3 to 4 in 26 to attend the police academy in either July of 26 or February of 27. And again, those 4, 5, 3, 4 would be adding to 8 for the pending retirements. In our clothing and equipment count, I'm asking for an additional 23,000 and change, and all of that is going to be used for outfitting those new officers with uniforms, equipment, and vests. Under minor equipment, an increase of 9,800 and change to cover 3 primary purchases. One would be new gun lockers. The gun lockers we have are old school like gun lockers, and they take up more room than what we needed, and there's only 32. So we have 44 currently, so not everybody has it. Most of us administrators have given them up, but the replacements that I'm looking at provide us 45, so that'd be more than what we would need. It'd be additional cyber keys for those additional officers that would be being hired, plus a little bit of leftover supply to replace old cyber keys. And the last item in there is a new digital camera. The detective division, the current one, is having some functionality problems. We would like to keep the current one, have it repaired, use it as backup, get a new one use there. Now under training, there's an additional 27,000 and change in there, and all of that is to cover the attendance of the police academy for these potential. I might also note that we used to get a partial reimbursement on that from the state. That is,
Can you get that money back? The state is no back more money.
We'll need a budget for that.
Yes.
next subject there is speaking about is technology and equipment. We have a couple of software platforms and some hardware that either has come to end of life or is coming to end of life. So the first one is our digital evidence storage software, which is called Veripic. It is past end of life, and we are having difficulty actually getting stored images off of it for work-related purposes. So that's something that would be at the forefront that would need to be replaced. Another item just behind it would be the cameras and audio system that are in our interviews that are coming to end of life. Two other items that will be coming to end of life, but not until mid-28, are body cameras and the in-car video that goes along with that. They're both currently Motorola products. What we've looked into is bringing all of those items I just mentioned under Motorola's umbrella by having the video cameras in the interview room displayed by Motorola product, the body cameras updated to a newer Motorola product, in-car videos with a Motorola product, and in addition, Motorola's cloud-based connectivity for all of that stuff, which will answer some other things that I brought up, which is the Veripic digital system that would come under the umbrella of the cloud-based product. So we wouldn't have to buy a specific software. And then there's another item that we're having to deal with here more recently, and that was Act 22 requests, which Act 22 requires Pennsylvania police departments to release body-worn camera video and in-car camera video to people who request it from the public. The problem with doing that is it needs to be edited and redacted in order to do so. We can't allow personal information to go out. We can't allow sensitive viewing stuff to go out, things of that nature. So all of that needs to be looked at by somebody, edited by somebody before it can be released. Currently, we don't have the computers with the RAM base to handle that kind of work, and we don't have the current software to handle that kind of work. So it takes a lot longer for it to be done. But I'm being advised that the Motorola cloud software and that umbrella could take care of all of that too for us, which still need to be performed by one of us here, but we would do it using their product in the cloud rather than bringing it here in-house and buying the equipment.
So that would be an example of an unfunded mandate, so to speak,
That's correct.
right? We have to provide it, but you need all the tech to do it.
So I don't expect you to remember the numbers, but I can give them to you at any point in time. The combination of the Motorola cloud-based storage and software, along with the replacement of the interview room hardware and audio, replacement of body-worn cameras, and replacement of in-car video, if that were to be broken down over a 5-year purchase, the first year for all of those items would be $127,300, and the subsequent years would be approximately $32,000 plus an additional $4,800 for each in-car video that got replaced in a given year. The first year would have 3 of them replaced, and then we replaced them probably like 3 at a time until they all got done. But that's the only product that I know we've looked at so far. So it's just really only one suggestion.
Yeah, it sounds like having all one software platform, likely the systems integrate together. And again, like you said, on the cloud, I would assume would do that. It sounds like it's, like you said, upfront costs and then sort of these maintenance over time. My question is, I know we replace cards every 2 years or so. I'm assuming if we install these cameras, we can actually, and if they're still in good shape, we can move them to the next car.
We can and we do regularly, yes. The cameras that we have currently have been all in one vehicle. And even if that vehicle make and model changes, it might just require the purchase of a different mounting bracket, be a relatively low dollar to keep using the same product over a period of years, yes.
And what we've been buying has performed well, and or does it come with any service contracts when we buy it?
They do come with service contracts, and they also come with software support to deal with everything on the back end in terms of operating systems and gaining the recordings and locking down so they can't be acquired by other people and staff and things of that nature. But yes, to answer your question.
How often does that have to be used, Chief?
I'm the wrong person that my IT guy would be, but I can tell you it's more than a handful of times a year. And I can also tell you that it would very likely be more frequent upfront, and then it would taper off over the course of years.
And that would be under Motorola,
Yes.
in this proposal you have.
Correct. And may come under somebody, other manufacturer's umbrella, once I would know what that is and what comparable costs would be, bring that back to you.
So this pricing for Motorola, clearly there's competition. You're gonna look at others as well. You're just more high level, approval to look into these other vendors as well.
Right, so if there's any concern about platform, if there's any concern about costs and maintenance costs, or if we should go back to simply purchasing video and software that goes with it and moving forward in the direction that we've been using these types of things.
Chief, is there a standard product that other departments around the country use? I mean, is Motorola pretty much the?
Motorola is going to be one of the two. And the second one, I was thinking about it while we were leading up this, it's a body camera system, but it goes beyond body cameras. Axon, thank you, which is used by multiple departments here in the county as well. So those are the two big names that I'm familiar with. I know there's other products out there and I know they're cheaper, that there's cheap products out there. I just don't know what their quality is like.
We want something I think it'll last, not have to be changed again in 3 to 5 years.
When we've bought this type of stuff before and they give us an expected amount of years that we're supposed to be able to get out of it, or if it's even a lease program and you're leasing it all the way through there, and then at the end of it, they're giving you a brand new product or something we've not had to have replacements. Like when we went with our body cameras, I know there were 2 out of all of them that we bought, which were close to 50, that had an issue with them, and they replaced them almost overnight, and it's been good since. But most of these electronic and computerized type of things that we get into, if there's not something where we get and something's failing within a short period of time, that's very unusual. The last item on my list was vehicle purchases. That particular category is up a little over $25,000. The increase is due to we only have police SUVs available right now. So none of the big 3 are making a police car, pursuit rated police car. And that is supposed to change when Dodge releases their Charger revamp. But so that would be some added cost for each of those vehicles, and then the upfitting of each one of those vehicles.
I know we've looked at the enterprise lease program. Is that getting any traction across the county or in any circles?
There's departments that have done it and swear by it, other ones that do like we do, and they buy them and fix them up. But the one kind of less tangible item with using enterprise is the simplicity of it. So, if it's coming to the end of the year and you want 3 units and you place a phone call, you tell them what you want, and 4 months later, they're dropped off at your doorstep, and there's no upfitting, there's no running them to this guy for the striping to get done or that person for this to get put in. It's just right there, and you use it, and then you use it for the amount of time that you're supposed to before you get a new one, and you keep basically paying the same month for your fleet.
You're right. We did look at that a few years ago. It was we may be getting to the point where
It might be worth it. I mean,
Big picture, when you're looking at your total, what's the total number for the police? Or do we have that yet?
we don't have that yet.
Last year, you're about 8.4 million. About 7 of that is just personnel and insurance benefits, or that's just insurance. I don't even, that's all the benefits, but this is good stuff to be looking at, but there's not a lot of movement to be had in sort of all of the stuff that the officers need. Sort of a number to kind of track that might be worth just looking at a trend analysis, just a simple one of how many officers do we have each year? What was their total cost for the police budget? So it is cost per officer. And is that trending up or down? Might be a better indicator of then where is the big cost. Health insurance, I think, is still one of our main drivers. Finding savings here where we can, but that's the big one, is personnel and health insurance.
And the one thing that you will experience with personnel cost is that we have those 8 retire at higher earnings salaries, replacing it with for people with lower earning salaries. So there should be some breathing room in that number near the end of 2027.
But until then, we're going to have higher costs.
Yes. Training, FTO, yeah.
We're taking on the additional personnel through the academy, through training, and then while we have the other officers that have already signed for leave.
One question I have, which I think is correct, is so we budgeted for hiring this many officers each year, but the speed at which we can hire them is not keeping up with our budget. So we're seeing savings in the expense side, but that's meaning we have fewer officers able to get out when we need them to. So
You're right.
it's one where we keep budgeting a higher number, but we haven't yet hit it on the police side each year because we're constantly trying to hire and keep staffed.
Is that translating to more overtime with not having enough?
Yes, it does. But we've been operating at 41, now 40. And over time, I'm coming in probably right now, probably right about at budget, which we reduced for 2025. So we will, the other thing that's impacting overtime is we've had for several months, 4 people out on injuries or short-term disability. So that's had a pretty big impact. But we've made some shifts with personnel to try and fill those holes, try and keep those overtime occurrences at a minimum. So
Chief, the contract with Upper Laycock, nothing to change, look at, everything working the way we would expect it to?
I would think so. I haven't heard any complaints from them at all. I have contact with their manager on a fairly regular basis and also attend their emergency services meeting, and I haven't heard anything by either of those avenues. So
What is the length of that contract?
we shake hands and it happens.
It's worked really well, unlike a lot of others in the area, but we keep a good relationship with Upper Laycock.
Second item, the plan that kind of put together, I think it was really 2 years ago, to say, let's go to 44 officers because of, did that basically work out as planned?
No, we haven't been able to get there.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Yeah, I thought at one point we kind of did, but then we may have lost.
And I think the closest we might have gotten to that is 41 or 42.
Okay, so really couldn't get there.
Yeah, so still trying to do that.
Yeah.
So while the other townships are going through their budget discussions, things, and so police officer A gets nervous in his township. So he applies to us and we like him, accept him and everything. How long does it take for Officer A, Township X, to be put on our staff?
Yeah, that's a lot quicker process. And we actually have several police officers in our process right now that we're looking at. So if things were to pan out, you would have about a month's worth of front end leading up to, an offer of employment. And then we would have some limbo time there where we're getting them outfitted for stuff. And they might have a month's worth of ride along to learn the area, but they're already in-state officers, so they're familiar with all the laws. Little bit of, differences in way we practice, maybe where they came from, but it would be much faster.
Recent change.
So I'm assuming those names are not going to be on the Lancaster County Police Consortium list. There's going to be a direct application dropped off in our office.
Only moved so quickly because of a recent change to our.
Yes, it's great. That's great. You guys are making those changes.
It was a good move
Yeah.
by our township. So is there if we didn't make any calls to Upper Laycock, what would be there? Is there a base charge or is it simply on per call? per call.
Knowing the data, there's always gonna be calls. I mean, it's.
Right, I'm saying
Yes.
fixed cost having our cars ready to go over there. So I'm wondering.
5 years ago to include like pension costs, 5, 6 years ago, maybe.
I don't recall that.
We asked them to contribute.
What
That fund.
was that, 5? Yes, that wasn't contractual per se, like.
We just calculated it and said, hey, this was the reason why they agreed. We
We
did it.
calculated it through invoice.
Is there any difference in the charge? Is there anything that changes the amount per charge? If we have
Do you
to,
mean-
if we have to respond to them, yeah, I mean.
What type of
Call type.
You know, something that involves an investigation and goes longer.
Our largest cost 2 years ago was in Upper Lake Hawk, right?
Because of that ongoing investigation.
Correct.
Yeah.
But even without the calls you were alluding to, we still put a car up there as best as we can, 24/7. So we don't, practice should be that they don't leave Upper Lake Hawk without having another body go up to Upper Lake Hawk, so that they have continuous coverage. Now, there's times where that, if I'm being honest, doesn't happen just because of a large event or something that's happening somewhere else that has caused the manpower to be directed that way. But it would get right back on track as soon as that was available. And vice versa too. I mean, if something large happens up Upper Lake Hawk, there'll be a whole lot more that's up there than would be in East Lampeter, just handling situations.
So the bottom line is they are being billed 24/7. Yeah. For our presence. Okay.
Now they're being billed by call, but we're providing 24/7. So that it's a simple arrangement that has worked, but it is one of. You could potentially, if you open the can of worms of a negotiation, like then you start to really dial it in. It may be something to look at. It may not. So
We're happy with the track record so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if our costs start going up at a greater rate, or the carry, the operational costs go up and the call volume starts to decrease, but it's costing us a percentage, that may be something to look at. If it starts to get out of whack, but
I think that's difference. I understand.
Other questions for the chief?
I will continue to pursue the one vendor approach and, also look at other vendors, Axon or whoever else, just to get a good sense of what the market is, and could help with negotiation as well if we're looking at more than one. But I totally agree with having one vendor for all of those different pieces of software.
We're gonna talk about the cost savings here.
Human.
Okay. Because item 1 is okay.
you think there's a lot of content to roll through, so we'll probably roll through some of it a little quicker. We can keep on.
You're muted, Charlie.
Okay, yep, I'm getting it, bits and pieces of some of the conversations, people talking. But yeah, for the Public Works Department, we'd like to keep the one employee still involved. We were up to a 14 staff. We had one member leave. It's not asking for an additional employee. It's just asking for the coverage of that employee that left. With snow plowing is what really has me thinking about things. Since we did dedicate more roadways and stuff last year and the year prior to that, it's putting a strain on the Public Works employees themselves. Moving along to Fund 35, which really doesn't affect the general budget. But paving, we're looking at $375,000. And then there is an oil and chip for a $59,000 price tag. These are all estimates, of course. We base our paving on our robotics program that you allowed us to purchase a few years ago, and we have been using that pretty steady, and it seems to be really panning out for us. We did skip oil and chip last year. We've been doing a lot of base repair on Mill Creek Road, which is a oil and chip candidate this year. Moving on, we purchased a mini track hoe. It's been 14 years already. And we're finding out the hydraulics are starting to get worn out on it. So it's becoming a safety issue with lifting heavier objects, inlet tops and stuff, because we get into tight situations where we can't get the backhoe in. You're looking at about $103,000 purchase, but talking to vendors, they were looking at giving us somewhere right around $32,000 trade-in because of the maintenance we have been doing on the equipment. So the total cost would come down to about $71,000. Excuse me. Last year we budgeted for a new dump truck, and I think it's coming in next week finally. A lot of issues going on with purchasing parts for it. However, we did consider the chassis that we were going to put on the market to sell or trade in. But talking with staff, we purchased a large water tank to assist the gap vacs and also our vacuum sweeper that we'd be able to clean the inlets, clean all of our sanitary sewer. This will be like a support vehicle, but the tank would also be removable, and we could use that as a flatbed truck to be able to haul steel plates, inlet tops that we would change prior to a paving project. So that price tag to upfit that, we'd have to put heavier springs on it and possibly a steel plate bed. It's looking at about $20,000, which would get split between the road department and sewer department. Big item coming up within the next year or so is our radio system. We got some pricing through county radio and for Public Works Department to trade out our 15 radios that we have. We're looking at about a $31,000 price tag. We did do some research on some of the other options. And there is a new radio system out there. It's like a walkie-talkie. If you want to think about it as like a Nextel, but it does have multiple channels on it. If we would purchase 25 radios, I'm sorry, my paperwork's all over the place here. 25 radios, you're looking at about a $4,000 purchase. And then a $50 a year per radio upcharge to keep your channels where they're at, to be able to talk with other townships if you allow them to get into your radio system. But with all of the accessories that we need, charging stations, belt clips, you're looking around $6,000 to $7,000 for original purchase. So I'm not sure. We would lose communication with the fire departments through the radio system. We would not be on the county's site. However, if we would get 25 of them, we could actually upfit the fire departments with a single radio and an engine that they'd be able to communicate with us throughout the winter or any emergency situation that they have out there with vehicle accidents or spills, which is an option. Didn't look at purchasing telephones at this point, since everything's going hands-free. I just kind of worries me about that. But Chief, let me know if I'm wrong, but we're looking at the new radio system, or the old radio system is 2027. It's going to be obsolete.
Right.
Okay, so we have a little time, but we're starting to look what we can do now in case. But like I said, $31,000 purchase for radios, if that's the route the board decides they want to go. Couple other items. Of course, the parks, the roof at the mill itself. We're waiting on PP&L to install additional telephone poles so we can move the high tension lines away from the roof to be able to install it. We're still waiting on a work order from PP&L. I think they have the right of way signed. We're just waiting for final pricing. So it's might be tough. That monies may have to roll over to next year. And that was a cost of $216,000. Tara, is that correct?
$16,000 is the cost of the roof replacement and $26,000 for PP&L to the line.
Okay, and the other thing is our staff has been doing maintenance on the mill house itself. We've been patching the roof, of course, fixed up the whole interior, and we're still having some slight issues with the roof, and we're looking to replace that before we do a whole lot more stuff inside. You got to get that roof solid, and we're looking at a price tag of about $15,000 to put a metal roof on there to match the mill, so the whole property will start balancing out. The last thing I wanted to just mention, we did apply, which the board gave permission to submit the application for a Greenlight Go grant. We were told by a source that we should put an application in because they were surprised we didn't receive it last year. So we did that. They were supposed to announce the grant application in July, but of course, with the state budget, all that's come to halt. But just to give you an idea, which we're still working on our numbers for the budget, just so you know what, when it comes across, the total estimate to change controllers and everything out at along 340, which we could complete that area with new controllers, push buttons, countdowns. That's at Whitmer Road, Mount Sidney Road, and Eastbrook Road. Total cost of the project is about $322,500. We get the grant, our contribution towards that price would be a little over $64,000. But as I mentioned, we will not know definite if we receive that grant until once the state budget's passed. Any questions, or Tara, did I miss something?
Back to the radios, is there a preference for the county radios versus the rapid radios?
It's very rare we get on with the fire department. We monitor their side of fire calls, especially in the wintertime, with snow events. We're out there, we hear a house fire, car fire, an AED call or something like that. One of the guys will pick up and they'll just go to that area to make sure we got it clear. But we monitor that on different channels, which we could still do with some of the stuff we have. If we get into a major weather event or anything, like I said, if we purchase 25 of them, we would need 15. So we have 10. I'd like to keep a couple as a spare, but we can outfit each vehicle to have a radio that they'd be able to pick up and communicate with us right away. But they're smaller. The guys are getting the county radios caught on things. We're ripping antennas off in sewer repairs, in and out of vehicles, because they're carrying them constantly.
So you don't see it as critical, Charlie, the county connection. Is that what you're saying?
That
sounds like you have other ways that you could stay connected.
Exactly. Yeah. When county came out with the new radio system, that's when we started having the communication with county. Prior to that, we were just on our own separate radio wave. We never had communication with county before. It was convenient if we needed to switch over to the fire department real quick, but all in all, cost savings wise, I think the other radios would be nicer for the guys.
Is there, so
I think there's a benefit to having like full radios that access that mainly for any emergencies when you would need it. So any like the rapid radios you were calling them, those are still, it runs over your cell tower. So those are just a VoIP, like an app. There is an app I've seen, I just pulled it up here so you can have an app that connects to the P25 system as well. So
Okay.
you could potentially, I still think it would be beneficial for you guys to have a couple real radios that connect to the county for emergencies. So if the cell towers go down, that's when you need it when you need it. 99% of the time you don't need it. But that's where potentially cost savings could be. Hey, you've got phones, it's push to talk. So it functions like a radio, but it's on a cell phone. It's an app that connects to the county the P25 system. And it gets access to that. So, hey, everyone can have the app, but then you only have maybe 4 nice radios for extreme events, emergencies where someone can grab and go. So that might be worth looking into is, hey, you can use the app as opposed to having everyone carry the full radio. But I think I wouldn't want to get away from not having any radio access in
Yeah.
public.
Yeah, I know with our radio system now, we cannot communicate with the police department because it's all encrypted. We do not have access to that. If they need to talk to us, they have to switch over to our public works channel.
And that could be something you could turn on. I mean, you can access the police radio in other ways, but they're not
Yeah.
easy.
Anything else for Carly?
For planning and zoning, I'll be pretty brief here. So we're not be requesting any new additional employees. For next year, our expenditure will be higher because we'll be fully staffed as compared to this year. For the first 5 months, my position wasn't filled, so expect to see higher expenditures. For the comprehensive planning process, it's looking like it will likely not be complete this year. So some of what was budgeted for this year will likely fall into 2026. It's looking like potentially about 15,000 what was budgeted this year will fall into 2026. Then also with the implementation of the comp plan, 2026, that will cause additional legal fees and advertising fees related to new zoning ordinances that would come off of the comp plan. So there will be a request for more legal and advertising fees.
Works sweet.
Any questions for Jacob?
Okay, so I'm stormwater. So as part of our stormwater program, we do annual video pipe inspections, which cost around $100,000 each year. These inspections allow us to assess the condition of the system and identify areas in need of repair or replacement. From the most recent inspections, we've identified approximately $2.4 million in replacement needs across the system. Based on the results of the inspections, we anticipate spending about $1.2 million in the township's 3 stormwater sectors that they have broken down to address the most critical areas. The remainder, which is approximately $1.2 million, will be included in the budget for 2026. In addition, we're continuing with further video inspections so that we can stay ahead of the emerging issues, prioritize projects effectively, and plan for future infrastructure investment. Also, with the uncertainty and not knowing what projects will be required through the DEP MS4, a planning expenditure of $5,000 will be added to the budget for pollution reduction project.
How many employees currently in stormwater management?
That's Fund 7, so that's not your general fund. We went to until last year, when we moved the stormwater technician into the commercial zoning officer position and decided not to fill the stormwater technician. So then I'll round out the rest. If you have no questions for Kim. Okay, with IT, there's no delinquencies, there's general maintenance. And that replacement cost this year will be about $20,000 in physical servers that host virtual machines. And then another $20,000 for the agreement, excuse me. Yes, $20,000 for the agreement for the storage that comes to an end in 2026. Mid-2026. So by 2027, we're going to have some additional costs because we will need to replace multiple servers and switches. I've asked IT staff to look at replacing on a regular basis and not all machines at one time, so that we're on a revolving basis. But it does look like we're gonna have closer to $40,000 in 2027, and then another 20 in 2028, so that we get on schedule of replacement.
Non-police servers.
They're both actually.
Are those physically here? Or are they co-located?
So there are some physically here and there's some co-located.
I look at potentially co-locating all of them and then saves you a bunch on you're just doing switches for your network and your sort of internet connection. And then you also don't have to have as much redundancy and backup stuff.
Who are we buying our storage from?
I don't know that, but I will happily get you that information.
Suggestion is move to co-locating and let them take all of the extra costs.
Our phones, like, we're not using voice over IP. Where are we for phones?
Yeah. Okay. Is that a self-hosted or is that a service we're paying?
Service through device.
Okay, so we're not running the whole PBI, everything back there.
Not that I'm aware. But I'm going to ask you.
I wouldn't do that. I would say, yeah, stay with a service. There's cheaper ones than the Verizon, but.
Chief Staff was also looking at T-Mobile. They were looking at AT&T. I know that they were looking at other options.
We just switch to air call.
We actually have two services coming into the building because we have a redundancy for the police department.
For internet or for?
For phone, internet, and Ethernet.
If we're using voice, it should all just be, we have basically an internet connection.
I think we have something else that's a direct connection to county. Do you know that, Chief?
Is that the,
Fiber?
It could be fiber lines.
T1?
T1.
So it's an old T1. So it's a tele. That's different. Hopefully that's not our internet, but yeah, but it might be worth looking at. We now have Glow Fiber. Fantastic. So speaking as a user, we just saved a bunch switching to Glow Fiber.
You know, I just switched.
Switching my whole business over as well.
Okay, I'll move on. You're okay with that? Recreation. So the costs in the recreation are looking to increase, and that is due to the fact that the recreation program has taken off. And quite honestly, the summer playground program hosted 40 children this summer, and we had nothing but excellent comments about the program that was offered for those children. Now, what we will see over time is a reduction in the summer slide of those children. This was every day, 5 days a week, and there were educational programs that came to the summer playground. There were arts and crafts programs, and there was quite honestly just kids out. So, would like to increase that next year to 80 children. And therefore that increases our seasonal staff for those 8 weeks that the program is held. Also looking at increasing the cost, not substantially for residents, but increasing the cost to cover the staff time. This first year, we had a lot to learn. It was our first year doing this program, and we've taken all of that information and hope to have an even better program that we build upon. So costs for equipment, programming, and supplies would come to approximately $60,000. And of that, there's $25,000 that would come to the seasonal staff for that time frame, that summer playground in session. Now, I can tell you that we did overestimate seasonal staff for this 2025 budget. I believe we estimated $12,000, $11,000 or $12,000. And at this moment, we're only at about $8,000. That was expensive. So we were really able to keep them on the timeframes that we set for them, and they wanted to get out of there as well. They're summer vacation too. So
Is there a problem finding staff?
we had a little bit of a problem finding staff, but now we have 4 individuals that we hope would come back. And the gal that ran the program was fantastic. She's a great teacher. And, you know, we would hope that she would come back as the program manager again. And then we have 1 other seasonal staff that we would hope would come back as an assistant program manager. So with that many children, we would need those 2 positions filled.
And no volunteers like teenagers?
List,
Funny, because I just got a text from a colleague who they're doing a TV student, and I guess they need high school internship hours now. So I wonder if there's some opportunities to get some high school interns in the future.
Our society that do community service requirements. Could be other clubs that do that too. It could be sports teams that like to do community service too. And that's not really a regular thing, but it could be a nice feature to get, I mean, nothing better than have some teenagers with younger children. I mean, it just changes the dynamic.
Summer counselor that was a high schooler or is a high schooler currently, and that worked out great. The only concern I might have is that if there's a continuing rotation of people coming in and out, then it's hard for children of a younger age to know who they should be going to, how they fit in. There was a really great rapport built from staff and the children.
They were all adults being paid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any concern?
And Terry, you know this, I've gotten multiple pieces of feedback from friends and family, neighbors, just about our recreation program. And I mean, we went from 0 to say 100 miles per hour with this. I mean, you know, unbelievable amount of activity, and social media has been great, you know, marketing it. And it seems like we're really getting a lot of people involved, which is good. So
that would be good to know too, unless I missed it. Points, you know, number of people involved. And is there a strategic kind of look at what we're trying to do? What populations are we trying to impact? You know, youth to me, I mean, the summer program, look how popular it was, but the junior high school student, keeping them busy in the summer. Yeah, we have the school, which is all their athletic programs are looking for workout time. And so that's true, but you know, at some point down the road, what's the high value things that could be done? I know there were some ideas floated of, hey, could we get basketball courts, some kind of, you know, leagues going like that? Look at our little league fields, how they just, you know, they just fill up right away. Things of that, keeping them busy, positive activities as much as we can.
And what about senior citizen component?
So right before this meeting, there was a senior citizen identity protection session that was held here for approximately an hour and a half. And someone from the Attorney General's office came in and gave an entire presentation on how they can protect themselves. And that's the second one we've hosted from the Attorney General's office for senior citizens, not only geared towards identity protection, but scams in general, as they seem to be targeted. So we are reaching that population. I will say I'm not positive that we're reaching that middle school and high school population.
Well, just reviewing the, you know, the activities we're doing. You know, you might get that. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying might be an opportunity. And if you have a strategic plan for what are you really trying to do? How many young people are in the township? If we have 18,000 people here, you know, how many are young people? Again, the school is a hub. It is our little town almost, you know, with all the activities, the new recreational facilities they put together outside. I mean, there's tons of things there, and we're working with them so, in our program.
Okay, finance, no new employees, administration, no new employees. We are going to have those continuing ongoing costs for codification and the E-code. If there's any discussion you wish to have about library donations, we are having a presentation from Lancaster Library at the September meeting. So I believe you'll be asked for more money at that meeting.
I'd like to know how many, if we could pare that down to how many youth are using it and or parents somehow are using it for children. Because that may be under or over what we think it is.
We get the circulation numbers from the county, might be helpful to have prior to Lancaster Public Library coming, because most of our residents actually use library services in Manhattan Township, Peckaway Valley, Strasburg, and we divvy up our funds based off of usage. Currently, and we had set that, or I had set the target. We sort of have informally adopted of. We got to 250 per resident as our sort of was our target to get to. Now it's sort of maintaining at that number. And that was basically the library's always said we want 5. We said, all right, well, we'll kick in half and help you fundraise the rest from our residents. Has sort of been the response each time. So I think the numbers are good, but it'd be helpful to at least get the circulation numbers from county library board. And we at least have them prior to that meeting, because the biggest one has been the city library circulation has gone down, and they were hoping with the new library opening, it would come back up. I don't know if we're seeing those numbers there or not.
LEMSA is requesting at this point we are putting in the same funds that they requested last year. And then we heard you loud and clear about CTCs, and we'll look to increase those funds. Capital Reserve. So Bridgeport Route 462 implementation project is estimated to be about $600,000. If you recall, the township is required to do the engineering, the preliminary engineering for that, and then it'll be taken over as a construction project by PennDOT. We need to start that and by the end of this year. So we need to contract with a consultant in order to get that moving. The Lancaster Heritage Pathway, we have 3 studies, 2 of which we were required to combine, and those 2 will result in a basic loop around Walnut Street, one from that travels down Oak Grove and Pitney into the city park, and then on the other side along Walnut Street Extension. That project is moving forward with TPD, and we just saw another preliminary design taking into account all of the residents' comments that we heard at a resident meeting, as well as the board's comments at the last meeting that there was a presentation. And so hope to have some engineering move forward on that. And then we have CFA funds for the extension of the trail from the existing Ben Franklin Boulevard round trailhead to Geist Road. Now, these are just studies to put into place where the trail could go. These are not construction dollars. At the end of Geist Road, there would be an additional trailhead, as well as parking for trailers for horses, because those two road beds on the goat path, one would be an equestrian and buggy trail, and the other would be bicycle. The Smart Road Transportation Funds, which is the old name for the county project, the current name is Connects 2040 Funds. That project is the Strasburg Pike to Oakview Road Trail. That project went out to bid. You authorized the contract on that, and then we needed to really over bid, which was fantastic. They were looking to begin work in mid-October, so that project is moving. Lincoln Highway Phase 3 project is moving forward the streetscape project, and that is from Cartoon Network to Bowman Road. That is moving the curb on the south side into the roadway, installing 12 feet of multi-use trail along the south side, as well as a 5-foot buffer strip of grass. On the north side, that would be no movement, having a 5-foot strip of grass and then a 6-foot sidewalk. As you're aware, we've been working on obtaining all the easements for that to move forward with that construction, and we continue to do so. We're not quite there with all 27 landowners, but we're still moving forward. Really hoping that we can put that out to bid by the end of this year so that we have one full construction season, which is what it is estimated to take. Any questions on that? Tax increment financing, we still have the gateway signage out there on both the east and west end of Lincoln Highway, Lancaster. We're working with PennDOT on the western portion as they move forward with that project as the western gateway. And so we've sent all of the materials to them to incorporate that into the project and make room for it. We have not been able to contact the landowner out on the eastern end. We have tried a number of times. We'll continue to try. We may need to look at another opportunity out there. We have been in contact with PennDOT about an opportunity out there as they look to put electronic message boards in the same general area as we have the wayfinding signage, or excuse me, the gateway signage. And then we have wayfinding signage that we've worked on. PennDOT approved the signage, and they are intending for us to go through their typical tourist destination signage. So we still need to work through that issue with them. Any questions there?
Just give me the location.
On the eastern end?
Yeah.
Right around the eastern side of the mini golf. Okay. We have to come up with some cost savings. We have a DEA detective that has been in that position for a number of years. When that officer went to that position, the township was seeing quite a lot of funds come back to the township in Fund 4 over time. That was used for various equipment and projects over the years. And quite honestly, from a numbers perspective, that's not happening any longer. This is a seasoned detective that could be significantly used here in the township to train in that. I don't believe that the chief and I hold the same idea here as to whether or not this detective should be recalled back to the township, but it's not an elimination of the position. It is bringing a seasoned officer back to East Lampeter, where I think the skill level would be more beneficial to the township than what we're receiving now.
I feel more comfortable discussing this in like executive session. So that's just my opinion based on my knowledge.
Is there more of an overall reason why the forfeiture funds are down?
Well, I just spoke with an individual who works for the IRS, and there is approximately 130,000 in the pipeline to come here. He advised me that they were supposed to get an upgraded computer system that was supposed to take 1 month for an installation. They've been down for 14 months. They are now sitting on 3,000 distributions and have 4 people handling them. So our $130,000 is in those 3,000 distributions. The individual I spoke to is doing his best to try and get that moved to the front because of the conversation that we're having here. There's other cases that are in the works that would yield. But I don't know if we've said this before. My experience with the money coming in has been associated with a Republican presidency, and the holdup of the money is associated during a Democratic presidency. But we just came out of years of Democratic presidency into a Republican presidency, and those purse strings usually loosen up within a period of time. So I would expect to see more money coming in. Now, what amounts come in and whether they balance out what Tara is referring to, I'm not saying, but there is some stuff coming.
And how do we use them again?
Money is limited. Use has to be for police department items, and it can't be used for anything that the police department annually budgets for. Now, there's exceptions. For example, if we had an 18-car fleet and we were going to buy a 19th car, we could use it for that because it's an extra vehicle being put into our fleet in that calendar year. You can use it for, and we did, for a one-time salary replacement for the individual doing the job. And we've already done that in years past. But most of the other things have to be tangible items that are going to go specifically for police department use that aren't normally budgeted for.
Can't go to the foundation,
No.
but they're doing basically the same thing, right? They're trying to help with things outside the budget.
They are, yes.
That's gonna forward to Fund 4. And whatever Fund 4 does allow forfeiture laws, right? Similar to the foundation.
I believe it would be used for some of the things I spoke about earlier this evening, because they're not regularly budgeted items.
Yeah.
Your point was that bringing them back saves us where?
It brings service
Expertise.
to the town. This office has also signed the agreement. The next item is looking at contracted work rather than staffing and having potential consultants do the work over carrying costs of township staff. I gave you an example of one that could happen in, and that's the stormwater coordinator. That position's current salary is approximately $68,000 plus benefits. the consulting firm that we work with for this could do the same work for about $40,000 a year. And like I said, that's just one example. The next item is our agreement with SLACSA. We handle all of their customer service, we handle their billing, we handle posting their liens, we handle their finals when properties are sold. So that has been cumbersome over the last few years. The SLACSA just increased their rates again, and that has led to a number of phone calls for our staff. At the same time, our staff is trying to deal with ELSA accounts and calls with that, all of the same thing, customer service, the liens, the payments and billing. That agreement has a requirement to give 60 days notice at any point in time to remove us from that agreement. If we left that agreement, I could see one of our admin staff going to half-time. If we continue with that agreement, though, it does look like we would need to add a half-time person.
So if you looked at this as a sort of standalone business unit, does it turn a profit?
As much as you would think.
Okay. So more headache than work.
And would we anticipate SLACSA's sort of expense to us go, it would eventually, they would assume that cost and they would then pass it on in future rates?
Right, they have a cost right now to do that, and that cost we put in the agreement to 2028, I believe, with the most current agreement with an increase each year based on benefits, based on increases in pay, based on all of that information, as well as, you know, an overhead fee. But it's a lot of work for staff. In general, there are 3 persons handling all of ELSA and all of SLACSA currently. The next one. Consideration for a fire. Now, fire departments will view that in contributions if we do that. However, at the same time, I'm hearing that we don't have enough volunteers to do the fundraisers to raise the funds. So I put in there the option of just covering the township apparatus cost. That would be a 0.15 millage. Covering all costs would be a 0.22 millage rate. Both of them are under the current maximum rate. A second class township can put into effect for a fire tax. This is controversial for our township. All of the fire companies want to stay volunteer companies for as long as possible. And they made abundantly clear to township staff. And I don't think this takes that away, but at the same time, we are continually hearing that there's not enough volunteers to put into the events to raise the funds.
Whether that decision is made now or 10 years from now, it won't be the right decision.
Actually, those reports were, had a lot of energy 2 years ago. And in our meetings, they haven't been talked about as much. In fact, at least 2 of them have said, hey, our volunteers have been robust. Now, whether they are going to say, well, wait a minute, the fundraising is the membership or the volunteers to help with that is a real issue. For some it is, for others it isn't, but even that, I honestly haven't heard it. I think in the September meeting, we can certainly, hey, let's have a status of what this is, because there was a personnel committee that was like talking about that. Well, that committee's basically now closed, and I'm not sure if they would still.
That committee came up with a new funding strategy for apparatus,
Yeah.
which puts the township at approximately 277,000 per year for apparatus. And that's based on what's in the current fund for apparatus and what's needed over the next few years, because we have quite a few purchases coming up in 27, 28, and 29. That amounts to over 2.6 million, I believe it is.
So, like a question for you, and you don't have to answer it, but do we hear the same, is each fire department saying exactly the same thing? Well, hand in hand, I'm assuming, is really doesn't have any trouble with fundraisers. So when it comes to the Ronks and Lafayette, not to pick on those two, are they saying the same thing as hand in hand?
Well, I think 2 years ago, you had a wide variety of things being said. Agree with hand in hand. Ronks no longer does fundraisers. They essentially live on investments and the contribution from the township.
Okay.
So other two are, heavily steeped in fundraisers. And, obviously like Lafayette has a huge ladder truck project. So I think just an assessment of that at the meeting can certainly help. I realize we're getting into the budget calendar, but.
I think in general, the main one is it's a transparency tool is more how I view it, and it codifies the investment that we're making. So, but I'm not seeing here as a proposal to generate additional revenue with this. It's more of when the taxpayer gets the bill for their taxes, because we could, right now, that 0.15,
Yeah.
right? Like the millage rate is exactly the same on the same amount of real estate. It's a matter of, do you have, here's your real estate tax bill and it's $100, or here's your real estate tax bill for the township and it's $85, and 15 of those dollars are which we're already spending for our fire. We're now saying we're codifying that we will from now on spend this amount for fire. So one, it makes the funding a little more permanent to the fire companies and the EMS, because you can also have an EMS tax as well. And it's one of it. So a lot of this is mainly saying we are already paying this amount as a township to our fire companies and EMS. We're now putting it on your tax bill so that you see it, because we have one member of the public in the room who sees all of the budget in that level of detail. Now, the counter argument from some of the fire companies is we don't want the taxpayers to see that you're already giving us money, so that they will think that they're the only ones giving us money, so that they will give us more money. So the argument of I don't want the taxpayers to know that you're giving me money is not a great argument. But I also recognize the practical impact is your fundraising might go down a little bit. I'm already writing a check, because the taxpayer doesn't know that your budget's $1 million and the township's only kicking in, $500,000, and you're still fundraising that difference. But I think it does give us, I brought this up last year and then got some of the sky is falling arrows from it. But I think it's a worthy discussion. Early on, when I was a supervisor, I was opposed to the idea. As I said, just put it in the general fund. Millage is a millage, doesn't matter. It's in the budget, everyone can read the budget. Practically, no one reads the budget, but you do read your tax bill. So there's an element of, and there's a longer term commitment to funding fire and EMS. And it also gives us the opportunity in the future of, if it becomes more difficult to fundraise for the rest of the apparatus, or we need more funding for EMS, we can raise that tax, and it's a clear one of, hey, these are your taxes, 100% of that tax increase goes towards, we're now funding EMS at double the rate because they're struggling. We want to maintain, ambulance services, or all of a sudden we can't get as many volunteers and we absolutely need a new truck and they can't fundraise for it. We're going to the truck still needs to be bought and purchased and on the road. We're at the end of the day, we're responsible for making sure there's a truck that pulls up to your house when it's on fire. And if the fire company can't make the difference, like, we are on the hook. And the fire tax at that point, sort of, real question is, do you want to have a fire tax right as you're moving into crisis mode, or do you want to have it ahead of time so you have the transparency, and then that's your lever you can pull with a little more transparency 5 years from now when we may have a funding crisis? Hopefully we don't, but I've shifted my opinion over the years towards, it's merely a transparency thing. The same amount of money is going to the same people. It's coming from the same people. It's taxed on the same amount of real property. The only difference is it's broken out and itemized on your tax bill. That's really the question, is, do we want to itemize this on the tax bill?
Just want to clarify, guys, this question, or Roger, you can say something.
Oh, and the other thing is how they're not getting donations from the, more than likely the Tangers and the big box, national corporations that are along Route 30, because they assume that a fire tax is being billed already. So when you send a letter into those offices, they're probably not being responded to.
Unless you have a strong local connection. I know Tanger does a lot. So there are some bigger companies that have local understanding that do work well. But yeah, that is for some folks who aren't aware, they moved in and they just assume they're taxed. Like, why am I getting a fundraiser notice from the fire company? You had a question for you?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, just to make sure that you're in agreement with Ethan. Was the 0.15 or 0.22 mils on top of the general, or was it? Yeah, okay, So it's still transparent. I agree with everything you said with around transparency, and Eileen, I think I was in the same boat as you, Ethan, early on, and now I'm also in the transparency, show it. But just to clarify, it's above and beyond the general, but
it's a way to, but we're not adding additional funding to those entities in the budget. So, and actually, it's rather than raise the budget the same amount and it just goes into the general fund, we're basically raising it that amount, pulling out from the general fund all of what was in there for fire and EMS, and then it's essentially, it's the same tax rate. It's just, you're both shifting where the money's going towards, and you're also adding in an extra millage rate increase.
Well, it would be an increase in what amount was shifted if you chose to go with the 0.22, because that is the full.
Yeah, got it.
This, we can do,
No, that's not.
that's not.
You can go to 3 mils
What's needed to fund the app.
The apparatus.
that we're currently funding.
That can be increased year over year.
So just back to Ethan's question, I'm happy you said EMS. So I'm sorry, we get 56,000.
56.
Do the math for me, someone. How many mils would that be? Would that be point? Like, why? Here's a question. Whatever, it's 0.1. I know it's not that, but
It's under one.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we do that same transparency, same tax for that?
I would agree. I would do both at the same time and sort of break those. Because currently EMS is capped at, I think, 0.5 mils, fire is capped at 3 mils. Pending legislation to bump that to 5 and 10 mils in the Senate right now, and there's a chance that passes and not this legislative session, the next legislative session. So it is one of, I would like I'd love it if the Emergency Service Committee had a robust discussion on this, and I'd love to have the chiefs come and tell us what they think. I think the conversation needs to be had. I appreciate you bringing it up, Tara. These are the options. Like your cost saving ones. I think we should be looking at all of these, as well as I think the fire services tax makes sense.
I agree. I would want, just to add on Ethan, I would want heavy buy from ESC, and frankly, I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable voting on it. I would want a future board to vote on.
It is a discussion that we can't keep kicking the can. down.
Understood, have it, the discussion.
Somebody has to,
Yeah.
somebody at some point on this board is gonna have to say, yes.
It's a very real possibility. We're 5 to 7 years away from needing supplemental fire staff, paid staff.
And this puts in place a mechanism of, because if those costs go up at a higher rate than our projected costs are going up, then that is a way to tell the taxpayers of, hey, these costs are going up. They'll probably have read a dozen news articles and know people who are impacted by what's going on in neighboring townships with EMS coverage and fire coverage. And it'll be a conversation in the community then to say, hey, we're going to take this up. This is going from 0.22 to 1 mil, but all of that additional increases has to be used for fire. Because right now it becomes one of, and we saw this a little bit in how we handled our budgets during COVID, is because it's just in our general fund, we could easily just move and say, hey, we had earmarked this money for the apparatus fund. We just aren't going to. And then we ended up backfilling it with ARPA funds, but it's more of, hey, we made the commitment to our fire companies. We're going to fund you with this amount. And then something happens, we can just change our minds now, which gives us flexibility, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to the fire companies. They would benefit from a longer term commitment, I believe. And so that's part of the give and take, is we're giving up some of our flexibility. We're giving a little more transparency, but it also then we have to spend that money for fire. We can't just choose not to on a whim.
More than likely, the next 5 to 10 years, they're gonna have more unfunded mandates to deal with. We're pushing money into those funds.
So if the board has any other ideas, we are happy to hear them.
So we're talking about this fire service stack with the ESC committee, with the idea it could be included in this budget. You think we're ready to do that?
I don't think so, but that's the.
I mean, I have my doubts about it, but I'm with you on, well, let's pop it open. We haven't up to this point.
Or even
Discuss it. We
At
can.
a public meeting, DSC is one of, because it's one of, frankly, I don't think we're gonna get 100% buy-in. The real question is there enough buy-in for the board to feel comfortable saying, we believe it's the right decision, and we're gonna see how it goes? And I'd be mainly looking for buy-in from the 3 people who have to deal with it, next year.
Well, we could add it to our supervisor topics at the very least.
And maybe invite some of the chiefs.
And
in.
then get into a discussion about it.
Potentially looking at a 2027 implementation.
Is that the name that it has to have, fire services tax?
I think.
So if it went to emergency,
So, but there's different caps on EMS and fire.
So you have ambulance rescue and emergency services. So depending on which one, you have to review the township code. They have different cap amounts.
Okay, so are we good?
Just one other thing, which we've talked about, is on the recreation side. We have the opportunity for grant funding, which would be much easier if we can get nonprofit status. I do have a lead to pass you on that. I think there might be a very quick way to get that. It's not typically done, but it has been done with municipalities, basically a donor advised fund, run through a local, someone who runs donor advised funds would reach out and talk to. That allows us to get right to nonprofit status, much less paperwork and headache, and allow companies to write checks to the fund, get the tax exempt status, and then we just advise where it goes.
Okay, so real quickly, going to go through the general fund assumptions that were used to come up with the projections, the 5-year projection. No increase in millage rate for any of the years. Real estate tax is at 1% increase per year. The earned income tax at 2%, all other taxes at 1%. Pension state aid at 2%, police charges to Upper Laycock at 3% increase, why you just heard that is gonna happen. Because they have a surplus of funds with it. And then all other revenues at the 2024 rate. Then salaries, increase of 4% for police, 3.5% for everyone else. Health increase at 6%, again, not what's actually happening. Other employee benefits, 3%, workers' compensation, 3.5%, professional services at 5%, insurance at 5%, utilities at 5%, and all other contributions increasing at 2% each year, and all other expenditures at 3%. That said, Kevin was kind enough to run a 3% increase for the next 5 years. Based on those assumptions and based on the 2025 budget, okay? He also ran a 5% tax increase for each year, a 7% and a 15%. Now, he also did a 20%, but we knew that was probably not something that would be considered feasible. So you can see with the 15%, we fall below the 18% guideline of policy of the board in 2028. With a 3% increase, we fall below that policy in 2027. So we need your guidance as we develop the budget as to what that increase should be. And we all need to remember that, that millage rate is based on the assessed values, which in some cases on some properties, we are now below the 2018 assessed value.
So Rockville. When will that, when's the best chance we'll see that in future tax revenue at an amount close to 2018 levels? That 2 years off?
No. I would say more like 4. Remember, the agreement you just signed gave them 2 years to search for funding. They still have $2.5 to $3 million in sewer upgrades to do in order to accommodate the next phase, which is 5, the 380 units. All that they could develop immediately at this point is 128 apartments. Right. Right.
So that's almost off this chart. Greenfield North.
Little close that the buildings are going up pretty quickly. Those are the first 2 buildings. So you're looking at 300 apartments. We still have 328 to come between apartments and townhouses. And that construction is anticipated to continue over the next 4 years.
Even then, it would bump into the TIF fund.
Greenfield North.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was wrong.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
What percentage again?
18% is the policy.
The goal was to get to 3 months, was sort of the recommendation from sort of your best practices is to carry 3 months of operating funds. in the chance that, hey, something goes wrong and we're not collecting, or we're not getting reimbursements, or state doesn't pass a budget on time. And all of a sudden the county doesn't get money, then we don't get reimbursements. That's so it really should be like 17.67%. Roughly 3 months was the objective with that.
Again, a lot of assumptions here
Yeah.
that we all know aren't 100% correct. So, and the fact that we were, $1 million less in expenditures last year. Now, that was because some positions weren't filled, that's because we have department heads that are fiscally conservative, and they shop around and they make sure they get good product, but at the lowest rate possible. And we forego some things in some years to make those kind of expenditures.
And we did 5 last year.
Yes.
We did 5% much. You all did 5%. Sure.
Okay, at least penciling in 5, and then as we get the full budget is what we want to then move back a little bit.
I think we definitely committed to that last year, that we knew we're gonna use 5 as a standard.
Then when we get the full actual budget, then we can start looking at, we have the assumptions here, and then we get into the actual nitty gritty of all the other little taxes. And the other one is, I don't know if we have, is looking at campgrounds for our amusement tax. I don't know if we got an answer on that. If we,
There is no tax fund.
so we are currently not charging our campgrounds the amusement tax. Good to know.
It's all like, they were gonna go, it was gonna go away, right? Is that?
No, there's pending legislation to remove them.
Oh, okay.
Representative Zimmerman has that, and there's an article in the paper.
Oh, yeah.
There's one township that it's a big bill for them and their. So, but so that wouldn't affect us. We currently do not charge that to.
What's the history of us owning Notes Mill House?
When did we purchase it?
What's the history of why we own it?
So we purchased the former flea market, which is next door to it, which runs along the Mill Creek there. And that was purchased as a future park property. When John Stevens owned the mill and the mill house, he came to the township and inquired as to us purchasing from him. That's a right of first refusal. We didn't have an agreement, but that was his intent. And the township took that under consideration because that came with the ownership of the dam. And the mill race directly next to the current Gibbons Park at Knoll Mill property. So the township board of supervisors decided to purchase that as well.
So that would be one of 2 properties. Well, obviously, Flory Park, we're buying that property.
That's correct.
And
So
that makes sense. Is that the 2 that we own then? Will that be the
The
2
2
properties we own?
that's correct.
I say it came with the park and the dam.
And it comes with a lot of expense.
Is that something that can be subdivided off? And
The house and the mill.
just basically if we can keep the dam rights, and is that a?
Flip
It's probably very valuable land if it's in the
For the
flood.
home, yeah,
it's in the floodplain.
yeah, the park is good for us, but the actual home, which wouldn't be in the floodplain, I would hope.
Probably is in the flood.
Home is partially in the flood.
Okay.
But the home is historic.
Yeah, sure.
But for example, the market's really good if it's one of like, our main interest is, we don't want to be a real estate owner of housing. If we have housing, we'd like to use it for a good purpose. But the park we want and the water rights and the dam rights, because that's the value to the township and our community. If there's a way that we could look at what would it take to subdivide that piece off and then remove the liability and get some cash that could essentially offset what we just purchased at Flory Park.
I'd just like to see that. I mean, the house, we're hearing about the expenses, can't keep
It's
the
a
grass,
beautiful, it's a
can't
nice,
keep the grass cut. Specialized building, the mill. I agree about the park.
We use didn't we use park funds to purchase partials? Yeah. Yeah, if you use, yeah. That grant, yeah, there was some grant.
Is that
Yeah.
released yet or?
We do have multiple grants being applied for the development of Gibbons Park.
That's the point of owning real estate where it's not providing value and it's a liability in a sense. Said, but still, yeah, I would at least look into what it would take to subdivide that off.
You have organizations like Bridge of Hope, just on housing, and, you know, they're buying, they acquire properties. Too, not to say I wouldn't, but we're looking at housing answers for some people.
our problem is our assets can't be made liquid like you can if you were owning the house. So it's an asset, but it's a non-liquid asset. Any other comments, questions from the board?
So we will plan 5%. The last item I have is, we do have some folks on staff that are coming of an age where retirement is becoming a consideration. And so I've asked them to do some succession planning and consider either in-house staff that might be able to move up and fill those positions, or whether or not we need to look outside for the filling of those positions. So we are working on that for those that are in.
I think the suggestion would be if you have people that are interested in potentially stepping up at some time, they should come to these meetings, and see what you guys have to deal with and the questions you get, so. Without being on that seat quite yet.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any final questions from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, I'll
Make a public comment, you know, I have to check out a question. In terms of law enforcement personnel, what metrics are decided to figure out how many is necessary? I know you're shooting for 40, 44, and with some of the land development projects coming to fruition, will that increase? Does it do, we're getting to the point at that? And with like I said, the land development, there will be an increase. Probably is 10% of the population. So I'm wondering what metric can base that off of, how much personnel you need chief, and yeah, and part two, with the millage and the fire tax, whatever that may be. I just want to point out that once you earmark the funds for that specific persons, it is then there. And when you have funds, you want to spend funds. So just keep that in mind with your decision, whether it happens or not. However, you earmark it is super important, as I think Ethan pointed out. So just curious about personnel. I know we're not quite reaching what it sounds like the metric will, the amount of personnel we will perform now, and with the retirement people, you're trying to replace those seats, but I don't see any additional. So I'm just wondering what metrics you base that on. Is it population or calls, please?
So the township had a study done years ago. Definitely going back more than a dozen years, to provide numerics on how many officers would be required to provide adequate coverage for the residency and the emergencies that they were facing. And so those numbers inflated beyond what we actually had, but it was something that was looked at as towards something that we would work towards. We haven't had another study done similarly to that, but what I've been using is, an equation between, how many calls that we handle annually with how many officers we have working here versus what other police departments around the county are doing with those same numbers that I'm also able to have in front of me at the same time. So, East Lampeter Township officer per officer, there's only one other police department that is handling more calls per officer than we are, but we're neck and neck and trading places with them from year to year, and that's the city of Lancaster. So we handle call volume officer per officer than any other police department does in Lancaster County. But at the same time, we are getting it done with the staffing we do have. We run 6-man shifts. We do allow a number of those people to come off, but we do control that as well. So
Sure, you're covering, I'm looking at like a proactive rather than, I hate for in 2 or 3 years when some of these land development projects, you're reacting and then it sounds like you're at a point where right now you're trying to build to a point where you can't, in 2 or 3 years, that gap is only going to increase if the budget isn't considered. It seems like perhaps, so that's the only, just wanted to make sure that was considered with the increasing population, that
understood, yeah.
the money is there for you when you need it, so.
Both those projects have been thought about and discussed and still doing so.
Great question. All right, any other final questions? No, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Rupp. Public comment on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.